The logical side of my brain says all these people thinking Alabama is going to keep getting these 5 stars has got to stop. But what I see on these computer screens tells me it ain't going to stop.
You are Locked On Bama, your daily podcast on the Alabama Crimson Tide. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back into Locked On Bama, AHSA Radio Network. Luke Robinson, that's me. Bama Online's Jimmy Stein, that's him. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel, and we'll talk about FanDuel here in just a bit. And thanks for making this your first, second, third, fourth listen. We don't care what it is. We're just glad you're here. Jimmy, still staying excited about recruiting. I mean, it's still going absolutely bonkers. There's part of me, the negative part of me, keeps waiting for something bad to happen, but boy, it's just not happening. I'm looking down this list, talking about Caleb Cunningham, talking about Caleb Edwards. We're now, we used to love Jalen's. Now we love Caleb's. Talking about Faison Brandon, who is a 2026 guy, but the number one in the class of 2026. Damian Shanklin will be committing on July 4th. Javian Campbell, there's another one. A.K. Deer. Now, let's start with Caleb Edwards, who will announce on July 2nd. We think that's the next commitment. We think. Now, I mean, some surprises happen, and they have been happening. But we believe Caleb Edwards, the tight end out of California, will be committing to Alabama on the 2nd, right?
That is the prediction at BOL. I am super excited about Caleb Edwards. He's ranked the number 6 tight end in the nation. If you look at the On3 industry ranking, unique blend of a weapon as a pass receiver, but a big 235-pound body. If this kid weighs 235 in high school, he's probably going to be like a 250-pound player, in college. I mean, this is going to be a big, strong dude that you're going to think of, okay, well, he's a block first guy. And that may be the case. But when you watch Caleb Edwards catch balls in high school, that's the exact reason why he's the number 6 tight end prospect in the country. I mean, he brings both to the table. That's hard to find. I like Nick Townsend a ton at tight end. He's going to choose Texas over Alabama, apparently, per what we're thinking at On3. And I was excited about him. And to be honest, I mean, I would rank that guy number 1. But one difference between Nick Townsend and Caleb Edwards, you're hoping Nick Townsend develops into a good blocker. Caleb Edwards is going to sort of show up that way. So with Caleb, he's got to work on developing the pass receiving more so than Nick Townsend. But I'm just saying Caleb Edwards is bringing some physicality. And at Alabama, look, throughout all our history, we've had some really good blocking tight ends. It's a big part of the running game success. So very excited about Caleb Edwards. And we can keep talking about 5 stars. Let's turn this into a 5-star podcast. But Caleb Cunningham, as Luke pointed out earlier, again, I wonder, I mean to look this up, and I will soon, Luke. I wonder how many 5-star wide receivers from Mississippi have panned out. What's the hit rate? I bet it's really good.
I can name 2 right off the top.
Exactly. It just seems like, okay, a 5-star wide receiver from Mississippi, that's going to work out. Jerry Rice, by the way, was not a 5-star recruit, even though they didn't have the star system back then. He wouldn't have been a 5-star recruit at all, but probably the best receiver in the history of football, also from Mississippi. But I just have a ton of, I think with some recruits, Luke, even 5 stars, there's some bust factor. There's some, we'll see. It might not work out. I think with Caleb Cunningham, I just hate using the term can't miss. But if I'm going to use it, I'm going to use it with that guy.
Now, there's no doubt. Now, we still don't know when he's going to commit. We just know he's been incredibly pro-Bama on all social media, and we've gotten crystal balls for him from some big names. So we don't know when he's going to commit. That could be an anytime thing, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's a certain date that's known. I mean, it could happen today. Well, I think Tim Watts at our BOL site, he's batting around 1,000 this year with this class, and he's predicted Caleb to Alabama. It could happen today as we record this on a Sunday morning. It could happen today. It might happen near the end of the month. There's a lot of factors that go into that. And by the way, every kid is different. Every situation is different. sometimes the timing of the public commitment is different based on whatever is going on in the kid's life, whatever's going on. And honestly, as silly as it sounds, a little inside baseball here that people like to know, these kids love these edits, right? They call the edits, the digital posters. They love that stuff. And Hayes, Fawcett at On3 is a guy that a lot of the kids go to saying, hey, can you do my commitment edit? Can you please do it? And Hayes is happy to do it. It's a part of his job and he loves to do it. But when he's got 30 kids asking for him at once, it takes a while to put that stuff together. That's a factor too, in terms of the timing of these things. It takes a while to build those things when there's 30 in the pipeline. So now that's not specifically the reason here, but that does happen in terms of like, wow, we thought this guy might commit 2 days ago. Sometimes they're waiting on the edit.
That's so funny. I mean, how it's sort of tail wagging the dog. I mean, it really is like you're building a house and they're like, everything's ready except for a very small porch light on the back that nobody will ever use. But we've got to get that porch light ready.
Well, so, the thing that's funny is to me is, look, all that matters, and I know fans don't forget, all that matters to us as fans is when a kid commits, right? Well, once a kid decides, okay, I'm going to Alabama, and that's the decision is made. So he calls his position coach and says, I'm committing. Position coach says, well, let's put you on the phone with Coach DeBoer. And then the kid gets on the phone with Coach DeBoer and says, hey, Coach, I'm coming to Alabama. And DeBoer says, that's great. We got a spot for you. It's perfect. And they make the deal as official in that phone call, right? Well, in terms of letting us know, media and then fans, that's not always the highest priority for everybody. I mean, the kid may have committed a week ago or 10 days ago or 2 weeks ago. We find out when we find out, when they want it. But sometimes it's not the most critical part of the process, right? I mean, the process as far as the kids and the programs are concerned is, are you committed? Can we lock this in? And then the media and the fans find out, at a later date, or sometimes on the same day, sometimes 10 minutes after the phone call.
Well, sometimes
a month later.
Whenever Caleb Cunningham wants to commit is the time I will be excited. So he's going to commit, I think. I really do believe Alabama gets him, and that's going to be huge. And then not to even mention Khalid Lockett. Look, Derek Meadows is still out there. I don't think he has an announcement date set. I've seen some chatter about him being hey, he'll end up at Alabama at some point. But a couple other guys for this year, Damian Shanklin and Javion Campbell. Shanklin is from Indianapolis and Campbell is from Kentucky. By the way, appreciate all the people who wrote in, sent emails, commented, sent me texts, DMs. Yeah, how'd you forget Jedrick Wills? I did. I just forgot him, and I'm sorry. When I think Kentucky, I think for whatever reason, I think Sean and Alabama. I think Sean Alexander and Brandon Dederick. Now, I think Brandon Dederick because I used to go through Elizabethtown, Kentucky all the time, and that's where he's from. But I should also be thinking about Damian Harris and Jedrick Wills for sure. So, Jimmy, what about those two guys, Shanklin and Javion Campbell? I know Shanklin commits on the 4th.
Yeah. Andrew Bone was talking about that just today on BOL. And we're probably, Alabama is in it for both. And you can't rule out as we sit here that they could choose Alabama because Alabama is a serious player for Campbell and Shanklin both. But probably, if you're betting, your dollar today on it, they're probably headed elsewhere. Both of them. Probably. Campbell has always been a stay-at-home guy. That's what he's been projected from the very start as a stay-at-home play Kentucky guy. Shanklin might be LSU. I'm not sure. But hey, don't put it this way. If they were making announcements today live, I'm tuning in. I'm watching because it could be Alabama.
It's a maybe.
Yeah, it's a maybe for both. But I wouldn't. BOL hasn't predicted or projected either way. But I wouldn't exactly write those down just yet for Alabama. Maybe Campbell to Kentucky and Shanklin to LSU. But we'll see. We'll see.
And we won't get to Faison Brandon Faison Brandon. I don't know why I have to say it that way.
He's
Faison
got a
Brandon.
strange name. That kid's got a strange name. First of all,
If
his
it was
last name is
Brandon
first.
Faison, it would roll off the tongue. Faison
right.
Brandon sounds like something like a robot. It sounds like something a cyborg would pick for his name and then mispronounce it, trying to blend in with humanity before he kills us all. My name is Faison Brandon, fellow human. Okay.
What an obvious analogy you came up with there.
All right, Jimmy, we're about to talk about two white rhinos, literally. But I want to tell you about FanDuel first, because we love FanDuel. It's the best, and it's a lot of fun, and you need to be checking it out. And right now is the best time. I mean, you think, well, there's not as much going on. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. I love sports so much. I love them that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get a few fewer games, and they wounded it down. So we're down to baseball, essentially. The Olympics are coming up. We'll probably have some stuff on the Olympics, but mostly it's baseball right now. And sports aren't sportsing like I want them to right now. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up any bet I'm in the mood for. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most of your summer. I know your summer's been kind of lackluster so far. Jimmy and I are here to beef it up, whatever that means. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, so I said two white rhinos, really just one white rhino and maybe a white cheetah. We'll go start out with your countdown here. Number 37? 38?
38 is Robbie Ouzts.
Robbie Ouzts. Ouzts.
What about?
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, what an underappreciated player on the roster, because obviously, quarterbacks and tight ends just one of these blue collar spots. Particularly when you're talking about when you have multiple tight ends that do multiple things. I mean, your blocking tight end is getting no more appreciation sometimes than the offensive guards, right? I mean, but Robbie has been. Think about this. I mean, you don't think of him this way as a 4-year starter, but Robbie Ouzts played as a true freshman with the first team in the first game. He's been nothing but a first-team player since he's been at Alabama. This is never a guy relegated to the twos or garbage time. Robbie Ouzts has been a first-team player since the day he showed up. Now he's going into year 4. He has started something like, literally been with the first team on the first snap, something like 12, 13 times in his career. He's been a game captain a couple of times. These are things he's already done, and he's not even a senior yet. Doesn't catch a lot of balls, doesn't make a lot of big plays, but what he does is he gets his guys effectively blocked. He's also a very good blocker in space, away from the line of scrimmage. That's actually harder to do, but he is a good blocker out in space. They try to get him. You watch this year on the screens, Washington like to throw a lot of screens. I think we're going to see some more screens at Alabama. Ouzts might be Alabama's best blocker outside on those screens. So we could see a lot of him in that role. Just a good, solid player, no trouble, just a great kid. Could have portaled out to play tight end somewhere else and maybe had a bigger role, but a Gump, he stayed at Bama his whole career. Now he's a senior. And I think he'll get a shot in an NFL camp.
I'm curious, Jimmy, you say senior. Would he have another year if he wanted it?
No, believe it or not, this is it.
The COVID thing's done.
No, well, I think COVID is around for a guy like J.C. Latham. Jamarian Latham. My bad, Jamarian Latham.
Yeah.
But Robbie came in the 21 class and he didn't redshirt.
Okay.
So this is a no redshirt guy. So he showed up in 21 when the COVID year was 2020. Who showed up in 21 and then played in 1, 2, 3, and now this will be 4. So he never redshirted. So he didn't show up in 2020. Had he showed up in 2020, things might be different. But he showed up in 2021.
When I see Robbie catch the ball, I feel like immediately he goes into like this kind of gigantic freakazoid roly-poly type mode. It's like his extremities get lost. I don't see his legs anymore. I don't see his arms anymore. He's just rolling down the field, And there were a couple of times, I think even in the game against Michigan, if I remember right, where he had like a catch and it was like you always thought he was down, but he was like somehow getting like almost hopping to a couple of more yards. It might not have been Michigan. I don't remember. But and the other thing about Robbie Ouzts, two more things. Number one, I would suspect he's on the top. Okay, Alabama's got a team full of dudes, right? We know this. Let's say there's 100 people, including whatever walk-ons you want to say. Okay, let's rank them 1 to 100 in terms of who to win in a fight. I'd be willing to bet Robbie Ouzts is in the top 8 to top 12 of people you don't want to screw with because he is big and strong and compact, and he plays a position where he hits people all the time, so he certainly won't mind hitting you. And the third thing is, if there's ever been anybody who looks gentlemanly while also simultaneously being an adult film star, I think it is Robbie Ouzts. Meanwhile, if there's anybody who looks like he got busted outside of an establishment going in to watch some adult film stars, it's this picture of Jimmy Stein. I just happen to have those two pictures back to back, and I'm like,
that was an all-time locked-on moment. Just because, I'm blown away that you technologically figured out how to do that. I mean, that's the part. That's the part that blows me away more than any other. How you figured out how to do that.
The Ouzts picture, like I sort of Googled him just to try and find, because there's not as much info out there. I'll tell you, the thing is funny. Okay, when you say a player's name, usually some kind of play comes to mind, right? That they did something. I can't remember what play it was recently that I was talking about. It must have been a kicker or something. Maybe Connor Talty. It was Connor Talty, I think, making that kickoff return tackle against Mississippi State. I think it was.
It was Mississippi State.
I'm like, that's bad. That in a sense, that the only thing I know him for right now is making a tackle, right? But with Ouzts, no game really comes to mind. I just have this generic reel of him in my head being this roly-poly type figure that I was talking about with no extremities. But I do remember when he was being recruited that somebody posted video of him dunking ferociously.
I remember.
And I was thinking, that dude is an athlete. I mean, now, let me also say this. When I was growing up, I hate to be back in my day, but back in my day, I remember vividly, like, if you were dunking as a junior or senior in high school, that was pretty awesome. Like, not everybody was dunking. Like, people could dunk, and there were some good dunkers, but everybody dunks now. And so maybe it's not as big a deal, but it blew me away. So I just thought
he's a guy I think we think of, to Luke's point, he's a guy I think we think of as a fullback. He plays tight end. He also played really lined up as a fullback in his first year on the team. That was a kind of his principal primary job with the first team offense, was lining up in the backfield and short yardage. So we kind of think of him as a fullback, but we are underestimating him athletically. I think he did make a big pass catch against Auburn last year, made a big play catching the ball. And I think he's a little better at that than we give him credit for. Keep in mind, last year, now he's a junior a year ago, and probably a time for him to start taking on a bigger role as a pass catcher. We didn't throw it that much last year. We only threw it with Jalen Milroe in the game. We averaged 23 throws a game. When you factor in that you got to get the ball to Burton, you got to get the ball to Bond, you got to throw it to the backs, and the number one tight end you want to throw to is Amari Niblack. You factor all that in. I mean, how many balls are you going to get to Robbie Ouzts? So, but boy, good player, glue guy, and you don't win championships without guys like Robbie Ouzts on the team.
I totally agree. Jimmy, when we come back, we have got another sort of unique white cheetah out there we can talk about. You probably already know who it is, but we're going to tell you when we come back. All right, so we talked about Ouzts, and now we've got another guy who's like, in a way, his opposite. He's sort of a lot of the similarities, but he's much smaller. He's much quicker. And I don't even think about him having a body. I think about him being nothing but hands and arms running down the field. And that's Cole Adams.
That way
Now,
he is opposite.
Cole Adams, again, I'm not remembering a lot of catches, and I tried to, again, in this new Locked On Bama era, I tried to do this much research about Cole Adams. He's from Ouzts, Oklahoma. I did remember that, and there was something about Ouzts that sort of struck me. Did you know that, Vic Koenning is from Ouzts, Oklahoma? You know, he used to coach at Alabama. He coached at Clemson. He may still coach at Clemson for all I know. He was a linebackers coach, right?
I don't remember specifically, but but yeah, it's been a long time. But yeah, Cole's from there. Cole's really good. You know, he's pretty high on this list considering he's a guy that hadn't played first team at Alabama before. Robbie, he's been with the first team for 3 years now, going on 4. This will be Cole Adams' first season, I project, playing with the first team. As to how much we see him, I'm not sure we see him a ton, but I'm sure we see him more than a little, if that makes sense. I mean, I think he's going to be out there.
I don't mean to interrupt you about Cole, but didn't Vic coach at Alabama at one point? Why am I remembering that? Or did we want him to coach at Alabama at one point?
I think his Les Kenning, didn't he coach at Alabama? Was he
Les Kenning? That's who it was, not Vic.
I think they're.
I bet you they get them mixed up each other all the time.
Cole, Cole's really good. Super fast.
I thought that was the coolest. I was like, the only other thing from Ouzts is Garth Brooks and Trisha Yearwood had a farm in Ouzts for a while. That's all I could come up with. So
pretty significant, though. That's pretty significant. That's a good. See, I'm a.
So I should have done the Brooks and Trisha Yearwood
music fan. Well, I'm a music fan, so that's pretty good.
Okay, we'll go back to Cole Adams.
You know, the last staff liked Cole a ton, and then he got hurt, couldn't really play last year. Didn't play, I think, until something like the Kentucky game because he was hurt. But he was going to play as a true freshman. He was even in the mix for punt return when Kool-Aid got benched, and they're like, "Hey, we got to come up with a new punt returner." Cole was in that conversation. I mean, that's how the last staff felt about Cole. So now we got a brand new staff. What do they think about Cole? They love him too. I mean, he's clearly a player. I think, you know, in terms of how much he's going to play, I think there's 4 guys that are going to separate this fall. This is my prediction. I think Luke agrees with this. I think there's 4 guys who are just going to totally separate. Jeremy Bernard, Kobe Prentice, Ryan Williams, and Kendrick Law. I think those will be the 4 main dudes at wide receiver. Then there's 4 more that I'm convinced are going to play with the first team. Emmanuel Henderson, Cole Adams, Caleb Odom, and Jaron Hamilton. I think those 4 guys are all going to play with the first team, and whoever among that group becomes the most significant player of that group of 4, they're probably going to play quite a bit, and that could easily be Cole. So Cole could easily be the 5th receiver. I don't think he'll be lower than the 8th. And 5th through 8th should play quite a bit and catch a handful of balls and play a big role in special teams. But I do see Cole as a significant player on the team this fall.
Boy, you know, this is something we could do a whole podcast on this, and I think everybody would have different opinions. I really do. But if you're asking me, you talked about the division between the 2-4. I'm getting Caleb Odom in that first 4. I don't know who in the heck I'm taking out, though. Ryan Williams is in it because this is a Ryan Williams podcast. So Ryan Williams in it and Jeremy Bernard's in it because we've seen what he can do, and we already know he's got a relationship with the staff, and they trust him and all this. So then you're basically saying, if you're Luke, okay, either Kobe Prentice or Kendrick Law is going to move from the bottom side of that one unit to the top side of the second unit for Caleb Odom. That's just me. I could be wrong. I feel like Caleb Odom is out there just catching everything. I mean, you remember that big flyover that they had for the LSU game a few years back, and the planes got so close? I think Caleb Odom would have caught him. Remember how close it was to the stadium?
Oh, extremely well. I mean, that was like a scene out of a movie.
Oh, and then we lost. That's what sucked. I was like, y'all keep flying way up there. You scared us apparently. So
if Caleb Odom had been on the field, he might have bumped his helmet on the On the landing gear.
Yeah, that's if they had just, or they could have just stayed flying that low, and we could have thrown it to Robbie Ouzts all the time.
It was low. If they had accidentally deployed the landing gear,
ground.
if they had accidentally deployed the landing gear, they'd have picked a few people off of that top row of the stadium.
I can think, boy, and if I'd known they were going to do that, I would have invited some people to sit over there. All right, that's going to do it for today's podcast. We will be back tomorrow with more, and until then, roll tide, everybody.
Roll tide.